Hello, and welcome to another episode of Better Cocktails at Home. I'm Brian Johnson, and I'm here in our home bar, the Quarterdeck Club, and we are making the next drink in our series on early American drinks, cocktails, punches, etc. For the month of July. Since the U.S. Independence Day is in July, I thought it'd be a great theme. So I've been wanting to make this drink for a very long time on our show. I just never have gotten around to it, and I thought this would be a perfect time to do it. But it is the Philadelphia Fish House Punch, which has an awesome name, just like the first drink we made in this series, Cherry Bounce. Another awesome name. I'll just with all these early American drinks with awesome names. Anyways, Philadelphia Fish House Punch. Before we kind of start talking, we're going to do the first step before we make it. So part of what's included in this recipe calls for sugar, right? So we're not going to use simple syrup. We're going to use actual granulated, I'm using cane sugar here. You could use like a Demerara, that'd be great too. But we need to make oleosaccharum first before we kind of start doing it. So we can let it sit for at least a few minutes. If you can let it sit for even like hours, that's even better. It really tries to extract those oils. So we're going to get that going first before we kind of start making the drink officially. All right, so we need an ounce of sugar. Now, I realize that I am measuring this particular sugar by volume and not weight, but it's going to be close enough for what we're doing here. We're not baking. All right, so an ounce of sugar goes into our little bowl. Next up, we're going to take a lemon. We need the peel, so I'm going to give it a rinse first. And we're going to take the peel and we're going to do couple nice big swaths and put it in the sugar. And we need these swaths for the beautiful and brightly flavored oil that you get from a lemon. All right, so we've got that in there. So I like to help it along. So if you're going to let this sit for like a couple hours, you could just kind of put it in there, cover it up, make sure it's all that, and let it kind of just sit, and it'll do its thing and extract the oils with the sugar. I'm going to kind of accelerate it just a little bit. I'm just going to give it a light muddle just to kind of help the process of getting those oils released into the sugar there and trying to bring them to the surface. Interesting fact, so you can call it the peel of a citrus. You can also call it the flavido, which I learned from a friend of mine. And so it's really interesting. So now I'm trying to integrate that more into my nomenclature of various citrus and cocktail things, but flavido equals peel. All right, so we're gonna let that sit while we kind of get the rest of our drink going and try to give it as much time as we can, since we're kind of doing it on the fly here. But like I said, ideally you would let it sit for, a couple hours. That'd be great. All right, Philadelphia Fish House Punch. So we're gonna kind of put all the ingredients in. We're gonna add the sugar at the end after we've got as much of the oil extracted as possible. So to start with, we're gonna do an ounce and a half of Jamaican rum. So using Appleton here, just a nice workhorse rum. So an ounce and a half of this. And this is, mind you, this is probably a good amount. I kind of reduced it down for like 1 to 2 people to drink. That's kind of about the size I'm making right now. And we're going to do 3/4 of an ounce of cognac, using the 1840 here from Pierre Ferrand. So did I say ounce and a half? I meant 3/4 of an ounce of this. And then finally, for kind of our spirited ingredients, we're going to do a peach brandy. This is a peach eau de vie, so it's very similar, but this is nothing like a peach liqueur, right? So before I talk about this, I'm just going to add it in before I forget. I'm going to do 3/4 ounce of this. All right. Okay, let's talk about this for a second. So peach brandy eau de vie. This is closer to what would have been traditionally used in the Philadelphia Fish House Punch back in the 1700s when they were making it, rather than For instance, this kind of more of a peach liqueur from Giffard, which is a great product, but they're just totally, completely different. Yes, they both say peach, but that's about it. In terms of flavor and tasting notes, this is really hard to get and really limited. There's not very many people producing this in the United States, especially, and maybe throughout the world, I'm not sure, but at least in the United States, like, I think this may be the only distillery producing anything like kind of this level right now. Maybe that'll change in the future, but peach liqueur is pretty easy to get a hold of. This is like kind of broadly, like this is like the adult version, this is the kid version. Like you drink this, I think of like peach candy, right? It's just kind of like peach sweet flavors. This is more nuanced. Basically it's a 40% spirit, so it's a brandy, so it's not, there's no sweetness to it really, but it's just got like those kind of really subtle peach flavors, and so it's a much more subtle product. But this is really common. I'm going to show you a way we can use this in this drink in just a second. So that's our peach brandy. And then next up, I'm going to do 2 ounces of lemon juice. So we already have our lemon that we took the peel from, so we can easily use this one, which is great. All right. So we'll do 2 ounces of lemon juice. And this is the part where you get to kind of like, once you know your taste, you can kind of tailor it a little bit to, you know, if you like it a little bit more tart, a little more lemon, a little less, you can do maybe a little more sugar. So you can kind of just tailor it to some degree. And I initially, when I made this one, I did it with 1 ounce of lemon juice, and it just wasn't enough for me, so I upped it to 2 ounces for my personal preference. All right. We've got our 2 ounces. All right, so now we're going to add that in. And then next up, we're going to add water. So I'm doing 6 ounces of water here. It's just straight out of the tap. And then to this, I'm going to take our oleo saccharum that I made. And some people say like, oh, at this point you can fish out the lemon peels. I don't like to do that at this point, because like that right there is covered in sugar and oil and just deliciousness. So I actually like to put everything in here, and then I can fish out the lemon peels once I've kind of gotten all the sugar off of it and everything else later. Because I want that candied lemon flavor. All right. So now we're just going to stir for just, you know, it doesn't take long because we've got quite a bit of water in there. That really helps the sugar dissolve. All right, so while this is dissolving, so the Philadelphia Fish House Punch comes from a club in that area in Philadelphia. And it was kind of a gentleman's club, if you will. At the time, I mean, back then, we're talking 1700, late 1700s, mid 1700s. You know, they pretty much just ate and drank and cooked and fished and hunted. So they kind of were well known for their punch. David Wondrich loves this punch, loves the history behind it, and I fully agree with him that it's an amazing concoction, great stories behind it. Presidents would visit their club, and I guess apparently they'd put them even to work. They'd help with dinners. They wouldn't just sit there, but everybody kind of pitched in and did different stuff, which is really cool. It's only kind of a interesting group of fellows. So that is nice and dissolved. All right, so what we're gonna do is, I've got that, and we're going to, I like to serve in little small glasses. Just kind of makes it nice and simple. And I've got 1 ice cube that I'm gonna add to it. just to chill it a bit. May not be the best perfect vessel for this, but I have this also. So this is the exact same thing that I made like 15 minutes prior to making this one. The only difference is, because the peach brandy is difficult to get and obtain, something that David Wondrich suggests is kind of using an apple brandy along with kind of a more common peach liqueur is a substitute. And so we're gonna give this a taste and see how it actually compares in terms of taste. Other than that, they're exactly the same. So, get my ice cube. All right. There we go. We've got all kinds of fun stuff up here. We've got a lot going on. Okay. So remember, this is the really official brandy side. This is the kind of Giffard peach liqueur and apple brandy mixture. So I pre-mixed it in about a 4-to-1 ratio. So 4 parts apple brandy, 1 part peach liqueur. So let's give it a try. We'll start with this one because I think this is going to be a little more subtle peach flavor. I mean, it is a tasty little tipple for sure. All right, now let's give this one a try. This one's a little more like full-bodied. I think that's because this is more full-bodied than just this kind of eau de vie. So this one tastes a little lighter. Flavor-wise, they're pretty similar, I think. I think this is in a totally acceptable method rather than trying to procure this, hunt it down. If you want to be official, definitely go with this. But this is kind of, it is lighter for sure. This is a little bit more intense flavor-wise. Just not a ton, but definitely more so. All right, so there you have it. That is the Philadelphia Fish House Punch. We've got 2 great versions here. One with an ingredient a little more authentic probably, but much more hard to find. This is much more obtainable, and it still tastes really good, and it's a perfectly acceptable substitute. Both taste really good and delicious, kind of a lovely, refreshing drink that was created in the early days of America and the colonies in the 1700s. And it is something that everybody should try and make because I think it's the connection to history is super cool. Like it's very defined. You know, sometimes cocktails and drinks and punches kind of have these like nebulous stories and everything else. This is pretty defined in terms of like where it came from, who was doing it, history around it. So it's pretty cool. They can kind of connect you, 200, almost 250 years in the past, and just to kind of be able to experience something that's they would have ate and drank and hunted and fished all day and just kind of been partaking in this. So I think Dr. David Wondrich, for all of his research and doing this and all of his great stuff on punch and cocktails, is really helpful. But yes, thanks so much for watching Better Cocktails at Home. We're going to see you next episode with another one in our early American drink series.